on a lazy summer afternoon, I would like to take you to a tour and guide you into our New York dantao Qigong school. Our school is based on the ancient practice of Qigong. It is the practice of the use of movement and breath and mindfulness to create health and vitality. In our Qigong practice, we have the alchemical Qigong, medical Qigong, and immune Qigong, and finally a classical Tai Chi Chuan, which is an ongoing course. And you could get all that information from my website at qigongtherapy.com. qigongtherapy.com. And in it you will find more detail. But let's zoom back. What is Qigong? The word Qigong comes from this ancient Chinese script, Qi. And Qi is pronounced as Qi. It's not Qi, but Qi, which means breath, air, the state of gaseous transformation, as well as the very much of the atmosphere that surrounds us. And you could say the word Qi is a ubiquitous concept in Chinese, and sometimes people equate it as energy. And then the word Gong is simply means work. Gong. So together, the two words Qi, Gong represents the using one's energy and breath and inner flow of Qi to put together in a harmonious state of working, growing metabolic functions. Qigong is like a tree in a forest of ancient cultivation. This particular tree has 3 branches. Top branches, second branches, and 3 branches. And those branches are the 3 particular ways that Qigong is practiced and a cultivation form. The first one is for health. The second one is for the martial art. And then the third branches is the sexual practice. So these 3 branches of Qigong, health, martial art, and sexual practice, are the 3 major schools of cultivation. The health practice works with an ancient practice called the 5 animal frolics. And it's imitation of the bear, the crane, the monkey, and such. The martial practice works with fighting, toughening one's skill, as called the iron shirt, The sexual practice is one that we don't need to go into any detail, but just briefly is what is called tantric. Using the sexual practice to open up one's inner energy channels. So all these three particular forms of school of practice, Qigong for health, Qigong for martial art, and Qigong for sexual cultivation are part of this tree of Qigong. But then we want to ask, where does this tree of Qigong come from? There is an older source for it, and the older source of this Qigong goes back up to the beginning of time, from the time of 2,000 years ago in China. We find a document called the Ma Wang Dui Inner Practice. And now the next segment will examine the history of Qigong. A very brief one. In an ancient burial dated around 2,000 years ago, there's an ancient scroll called the Ma Wang Dui Douyan diagram. And in this diagram, you actually will see the various figures, as in the case of this figure right here, stretching in a way to help with different elements. And this bending over is purportedly very good for against hiccuping. And this wonderful stretching really gets the whole torso. So as you could see that the ancient practice of Qigong has a long history of using movement and different postures. And this is the flying one, to help with different sickness. And you can see the remnant of it, of this man jumping, and this woman crossing her hands, as in the Tai Chi form, cross hands. With this long traditional ancient Qigong practice, no wonder that we find after 2,000 years a great revival of using Qigong as a healing practice. Now, if we zoom back and as a summary, we take a look at the brief history of Qigong, we find that 2,000 years ago, approximately, and that is the ancient scroll of the Ma Wang Qigong postures. And beyond that, I postulate that this is the shamanic time of dancing totem. And as time goes by, we are around at this midpoint, we have the animal frolics. And then in around 1400, that's approximately the Song dynasty, we encounter an interesting development of Qigong called alchemy, which use internal cultivation to cause a transformation toward immortality. This has very important important influence to our modern day Qigong practice, especially for our lineage, my lineage, which is called the Dragon Gate. It's a Taoist practice toward immortality and alchemical transformation. And then around the 1800s, there's a revival of the cultivation of Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan. And now in 1920 or so, a Chinese doctor, his name is Dr. Lou Guizhen, Lou, L-O-U, who coined the word Qigong. That's right. The word Qigong did not exist as a terminology. In the ancient time, it is called inner alchemy, or in that around the time of the Wato, it's called the animal frolic. And then in 2000 years ago, the scroll of Qigong is actually called Douyan, a enticing of the Qi flow. So Dr. Lau came back here was really a pioneer of using Qigong as a healing. And then to our modern day, the Qigong now has gone into the more and more medical, called medical Qigong. Modern day is medical Qigong, MQ. And now we're ready to go to our New York Dantao Qigong School, and what it offers is the modern day descent of the Qigong practice. As mentioned earlier, the 5-animal frolic is a Qigong form for health. And it is accordingly, legend has it is attributed to a most famous physician around 200 AD, a Han Dynasty court physician who started the earliest practice of actually surgery. His name is Wato. It is attributed to him that he therefore discovered and created a whole health practice called the 5-animal frolic. And in this particular one, you see the tiger. It's like lunging forward like a tiger. And then another one, it is stretching one's neck like a deer. And then in another one, this is like a monkey. See how it hovers like a monkey? And all that, the 5-animal practice. The bear, and finally, the most graceful way how a bird flies, like the flying crane. This is the origin of the animal of dancing, imitation of them. And according to oral tradition, they are originated from the time of the Neolithic cavemen in the shamanic totemic dance of imitating the crane, imitating the bear, imitating the monkey, in order by such imitation to capture the power. And if we make a further understanding, perhaps a deduction that those totemic dance of the shaman actually may arise from the hunters. When they try to hunt the very animal, they will have to imitate their movement in order not to scare them, in order to get close by them so that they could capture the animal. This is a very interesting hypothesis, and as we go further back of tracing the origin of Qigong, we'll see much more evidence pointing to such Neolithic lineage from the modern day of Qigong dance movement to the ancient Neolithic cavemen and the shamanic ritual. Now we're heading back to our New York Dantao Qigong School. The Dantao Qigong School I started in the 1980s as a way to transmit the ancient classical Taoist alchemy of healing. Thus, I call my school dantao. Dan in Chinese means elixir, and Tao is the way of elixir, or the way of alchemy. And through more than 30 years, I have created 3 particular areas of Qigong practice. One is the alchemical Qigong. It's a dynamic Qigong that's based from the Dragon Gate inner alchemy, and it works with the breath, the vascular circulation, and the endocrine system. Those are very powerful systems to rejuvenate our body and mind. The best way to know any Qigong practice is to come to observe a class in person. In this way, you could get a direct experience of the alchemical Qigong, which no media or film could capture the energy, the power of the alchemical Qigong. Here, I will attempt to demonstrate and show you with pictures what is the alchemical Qigong looks like. As you can see, the Qigong works with very vigorous movements, as in the case of holding up the sky, and also as in the case of this stretching down called bowing to the Buddha, and this figure right here is squatting down. There's a particular Qigong that I like to use to demonstrate called drawing the bow. That is part of the alchemical Qigong. This drawing the bow, as you can see, is a posture that looks like you are as if you are drawing a bow with your hand, and that you are moving the hand along in a pathway. Qigong practice called drawing the bow resembles someone pulling back a bow and arrow with the right hand drawing the bow, and then the left hand extending the handle of the bow. The bowstring is on the right hand and the bow handle is on the left. Central to this drawing the bow is the use of something called the meridian pathway. And this, in this particular case, is the lung meridian that stretch from the chest along the inside all the way to the thumb. This particular pathway is called meridian. And this particular meridian is called the lung meridian. And the lung meridian has an inside connection to the lung right here. That then indirectly connected to one small intestines. So the lung meridian in drawing the bow is the same meridian that acupuncturists will use the needle, such as right here, to work with any ailment of the respiratory system. So the drawing the bow, since it uses the lung meridian, is especially good for working and healing asthma, and difficulty in breathing, emphysema, and as well as what I call shallow breath. And in our alchemical qigong, actually when we do this drawing the bow, we use a healing sound, C. So it's a form of hissing. The hissing therefore stimulates the lung and strengthens it. This is according to the ancient masters. As you can see, the alchemical qigong work with the traditional Chinese medicine energy system, meridians, work with the 6 healing sounds for different organs, and it's a very powerful and dynamic and wonderful practice. Is it for everyone? Yes. Beginners are very good to do, but I will say that it is for people who want to develop the full potential, more than just healing sickness. This is the heart of alchemical qigong. Immune qigong derives its practice from the Jade Maiden sacred dance. Its use of mudra and yogic asana gives the Immune qigong movement a gentle and soothing effect on the practitioners. Perhaps that was the intended purpose from the ancient women qigong masters, who had to deal with the challenge of the endocrine and hormonal cycles of menstruation, childbirth, and child rearing, and also in old age, dealing with menopause. The immortal sister Sun Bu in her famous poem wrote that the practice of qigong is akin to polishing a kernel of gold. With each rubbing, the gold becomes more and more radiant. So, this Immune qigong then really works with something called the immortal sacred script. The sacred script comes from the magical Taoist cult of using talisman. And in particularly, this particular sacred script is called the dantao script. And it's done like this. In a single stroke. And in essence, if you look at this, single stroke of the Danjian script is actually a symbolic representation of the flow of the endocrine system, starting from the top of the head, from the pituitary gland, and then down to the heart. And from the heart, it goes to the lung, and then return back to the heart chamber, and then down to the kidney, and then the sexual organs, and from there it goes back up and finally end at the liver and spleen. As you could see, this is a diagram of the hormonal endocrine system dropping down from the pituitary and then the heart, and then the sexual hormone to affect the kidney, and then the kidney down to the sex organ of the ovary, and then finally recursing up to the spleen and liver. So the immune Qigong used this inner knowledge of the endocrine system of the hormonal flow as part of its cultivation. As an aside, as a history of medicine, I discovered that the diagram of the Danjian script predates Western discovery of the endocrine system by almost 1,000 years. This is astonishing because the Taoist master had probably come to this discovery of this hormonal flow by their own meditation, by their own internal sensing of the flow of qi and the jing, the hormonal cycles. Is this for everyone? Again, the answer is yes. But it is especially useful for people who suffer hormonal pathologies such as thyroid problem, of Hashimoto, or hyperthyroid, as well as different kind of cardiovascular, of the respiration and the heart, arrhythmias, so on and so forth. All that is under the practice of immune Qigong. Of course, again, the best way to come to see the Qigong is by experiencing it. It is a very gentle practice, so it is wonderful for people who have a weakened constitution or for more mature practitioners. Medical Qigong. One can say that medical Qigong is a discovery by one terminal cancer patient to cure her own inoperable cancer. Medical Qigong is founded and discovered by the late Qigong master Guo Lin in 1980s, who has suffered from 6 unsuccessful surgeries to remove her uterine carcinomas. And by the 6th time, the oncologist basically tell her to go home and finish any last remaining personal issues and basically tidy things up and ready to die. But Master Guoleng was unwilling to do so. Instead, she had discovered from her own resource a form of Qigong that in 6 months with this practice, she have come to completely cure her terminal metastasized uterine cancers. And during the span of her life, the cancer never relapsed. This is, of course, in combination with the standardized oncological clinical treatment of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, plus this medical Qigong. So, the medical Qigong is really a personal journey that she found that so useful in healing her life. So Master Dan decided to give it back to the people. And doing so, she was able to branch it out and spread this Qigong to a vast audience. In her first cancer healing Qigong teachers training seminar with 1,000 students, she spread forth this concept of complementary healing art, Cha. What is a complementary healing art, Cha? Well, it is using the Qigong, the medical Qigong healing walk, to complement the oncology treatment, which tend to be very harsh and difficult for the patient. And by practicing the medical Qigong, the practitioner were able to not only recover from the harsh detrimental effect of chemotherapy, they were actually able to boost the immune system in its ability to fight and destroy carcinomas. And this has been, out of the 1980s up to now, have numerous clinical data from all over China's cancer ward. And the success rate is quite astonishing. The improved rate of lifespan, that is, extending the lifespan, is almost 85%. That 85% of the practitioner find that their life span from fighting the cancer has improved statistically, and up to almost 15% complete cure and remission. This is tremendously powerful, and that I have witnessed it personally. That is the case. So what is medical Qigong? At the heart of medical Qigong is this practice of the walking, a simple gentle stroll with special breathing cycle, 2 inhale and 1 exhales. Working as a Chinese doctor in China, I had led cancer patients strolling around the hospital garden in a daily morning ritual. It is vastly different from the gloom and doom of modern-day cancer ward in the United States. In many of those hospital wards, the patients and the family member speaks in whispers and with deep sadness. Whereas in China, my cancer patient not only sings and strolls as part of the cancer treatment protocol, and the family member many times joins in the healing walk. This is important to know, that this is healing walk is done 3 times a day, walking approximately a quarter mile in a very brisk cycle of strong breath of 2 inhale, 1 exhale, in and out. Perhaps the practice of this strong breathing is one of the ways using the qi, as Master Galon say, as a way to boost our own spontaneous healing, to fight and ultimately disperse and destroy all the cancerous cells within ourselves. So this medical Qigong is wonderfully fitted for anyone who is interested in the Qigong, and that anyone can practice that. Not only cancer patients, that anyone could practice this healing walk as a way to strengthen themselves, as a way to heal chronic fatigue, chronic sickness, but as a complementary, which is complementing whatever they are doing. And I call this CHA, complementary healing art. In the YouTube and website, there's many videos of teachers and cancer patients demonstrating this healing walk, and you can search it by typing the name of Guo Lin, G-U-O, Lin, L-I-N, Medical Qigong, and you will encounter numerous videos of lines of cancer patients